Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another video. I know it's been some time and there are a couple things missing from the channel, which I can explain right now. I know I was supposed to go and see I can't talk. Like in all my videos, I just can't talk. Then again, I always wing these videos, so whatever. I was supposed to see Morbius, but I had gotten a little bit of a cold. I think I've finally fully recovered from it, so I can finally talk. But then after hearing all the reviews of Morbius, and also I've been working a lot. I've been working like 6 days in a row, and this is like probably, again, my only time where I'm gonna have a couple of days off where I can finally just relax and do things. So I ended up making the decision not to see Morbius, but who knows, eventually I may see it down the road and you could see that first reaction. So I do apologize if some of you are waiting to see my review of that, but who knows, it could come in due time. But now I think it's time that we get back to something that I started early on, which is the Attack on Titan marathon. As of right now, but even though this ended actually this past Sunday, Attack on Titan, the final season, part 2, has officially wrapped up, and I can confirm now, in case some of you guys are wondering, there will be a part 3 of the final season. It was announced after the finale aired in Japan, so we are getting a final season part 3. So part 2 wasn't, in fact, the actual final part of that season. There is actually still more to go. And I'll talk about that maybe in this video or maybe in another video. But Attack on Titan's not done yet, but still, I owe it to you guys, and I've been doing this marathon, so I have to talk about part 1 and part 2 of the final season, and maybe a couple other things down the road. But now that part 2 has officially wrapped up, I feel like it's now time to jump back in with the Attack on Titan marathon and talk about the final season, part 1. Now, for those of you that don't know, when I watched part 1 of the final season, way back when, I actually kind of like gave it an initial review. And I think from watching it all the second time, because actually I'm recording this video now after I just finished rewatching part 1 of the final season, because I wanted to make sure that there was nothing I was forgetting, and also to see if my opinion of it had changed. Because originally, I gave part 1 of the final season a C+. I didn't put a video out there. I just kind of like announced it on social media, or I just told people when they asked me. But I can honestly say that now that I have rewatched the final season, part 1, my opinion has definitely changed. And now that I've seen part 2 of the final season, that grade is definitely going to change. But if I'm going to talk about the final season of Attack on Titan, I'm going to let you guys know right now, we are going to be getting into spoiler territory. I'm not going to be talking about everything. I'm just going to be talking about the things that I kind of want to talk about. But since we're wrapping up this series, I feel like it's only fair that I address spoilers. So if any of you guys have not seen anything of the beginning of the final season, part 1 or part 2, go watch it and then come back, because there's a lot that I want to talk about. And even now that I've officially rewatched it, there's a lot more things that I want to talk about. But I've been wanting to talk spoilers since the first season of Attack on Titan, but I wanted to hold back until we got to the final season, because there's a lot to talk about, and I definitely want to give my opinions on it, because my opinions have definitely changed on the final season, part 1. So this is your warning for my review of part 1 and part 2 of the final season. Then eventually when part 3 comes out, I will be getting into spoiler territory. You have been warned, so stop watching right now. So, the final season, part 1, contains 16 episodes throughout this final part of the story. So we have 16 episodes, and the general gist of this episode, of this part of the final season, is that we get to kind of see what life is like for people that live in Marley, that are Eldians, how they're being treated, and we kind of understand more about what, Rhina has gone through, what the people have gone through. So we get another little bit of perspective. Now, when I first watched it, I was actually kind of annoyed by this, because after how season 3 ended with all the Titans finally being destroyed and Eren looking beyond in the ocean with Mikasa and Armin, I was like, okay, so they still have enemies out there. So how is that going to play out? But no, for the first couple episodes, we are specifically in Marley for the first couple episodes. And at first, I was a little bit annoyed by that. But now that I've seen the final season, part 2, and whatnot, I kind of understand why they had to do this. And I'm actually okay with it because there's a lot more similarities that happen in these first couple episodes that reflect, the episodes before it, and also the future that we'll talk about later. And then we're introduced to some new characters like Gabi and Falco, and I can't say that I have gotten used to Gabi, and yet I am still mad that she killed Sasha. We all are. But after, again, and I'm probably going to be saying this a lot, after seeing the final season, part 2, and getting more of an understanding of her character, yes, I'm mad that she killed Sasha, but also I'm interested to see where her character is going to go, because she has shown some change from when we're first introduced to her, where we are now. So I was interested in that. And I never really minded Falco. I mean, he's someone that wants to do the right things, and he's a little bit more calmer in certain situations, unlike Gabi that goes apeshit. So there's that. And then eventually when we reunite with our main characters, this whole final season, part 1, while there is some action in this final season, there's not a whole lot. Because what the final season, part 1, really is, as you would probably expect since it's part 1, is all these little story elements building up to when we go apeshit with the action later on. And that was something that did annoy me when I first watched it. But now that I am so intrigued in the story, and now that I've gone back and rewatched it, I ended up loving it a lot more than I did in the past. And even though there isn't as much action as you would expect, there are definitely amazing moments throughout this first part of the final season that I love. My favorite being is, when Eren literally declares war by taking out all of Marley's generals, and then the Levi squad coming in to help Eren and whatnot. And by the way, Levi's entrance in the final season, part 1, was fantastic. I love that moment every single time. So that was something. And then there are other little bits and pieces that I like that were kind of sprinkled in. But when Eren declares war and then the Levi squad shows up, that was just awesome. That was just really cool. But then at the same time, it's you're sitting there watching it and you're like, oh, Eren, you really screwed up now, because we're seeing a different side to Eren. And that was another thing that I was kind of annoyed with at first, because I was like, why the hell is he doing this? Because I had never read the manga, so I had no idea what to expect. And I'm sure that they would explain it later on, which they have. But I watched it, and I'm just like, why is he doing this? This doesn't seem like Eren at all. And then as things start to play out, we start to notice that Eren is making decisions and doing things that his friends and comrades don't like. He's basically going rogue and in a way turning evil. I mean, I was interested to see it, but I'm like, I don't know, like what are his intentions? Why is he doing this? And we kind of get a little bit of hints and pieces about that within this part 1, but we don't learn more until part 2, and I'll explain that when we get to the part 2 review, whenever I do that, which will be relatively soon. So that was a little bit confusing, because I wish we'd just gotten our answers, but we kind of have to wait and see how the story progresses. But all this is setting up for Zeke's big plan to stop all the violence, all the war with the Euthanasia Plan, which, for those of you that are a little confused on that and don't know about it, the Euthanasia Plan from Zeke, which is Eren's half-brother, is using the power of the founding Titan, and with royal blood, they can essentially control the anatomy of all Eldians. So Zeke wants to use that power to make it so that Eldians can't have children, and then they'll just die peacefully. And for some reason, we see in this part 1 that Aaron's all for it. He's all for it, and he's ready to team up with Zeke and end this whole thing of war. And then, you're just kind of wondering, that doesn't seem like him, but I want to save all that other stuff for part 2. And then we end this part 1 with, Hanji's being taken by the Jaegerists, which I'm just going to say this right now, it's a stupid name. I can't stand the name of Jaegerists, but that's just what a group that follows Eren Yeager calls them. I don't know why. I mean, I get it. I get why it's called that, but I just think it's a stupid name. So Hanji gets taken by the Jaegerists to try and find Zeke so they can get Eren and Zeke to come together and start the plan. And then while they're off doing that, Eren is in Shiganshina, where this whole story began, where he has captured Gabi. And then Peak has suddenly snuck aboard with some of her other comrades from Marley into Shiganshina. And Eren is willing to have her join his side if she tells him where the Marley spies are within Shiganshina. And then she ultimately betrays him, go figure. And then we have Mikasa, Armin, Jean, Connie, and everybody else is locked up in a cage. And they finally understand what Zeke's plan really is, and that is the Euthanasia Plan. And they're kind of stunned by this, and then after Marley has begun their attack on Shiganshina, we end the final season part 1 with Marley airships coming down, and Rhaina is staring down Eren, and it looks like all hell is about to break loose. So now we've kind of gone through all these little intricate pieces of the story, and when we enter part 2, we're going full out ape shit action sequences that believe me, I can't wait to talk about. But I'm going to save that for part 2. So those are a couple key points. I left a couple things out because I don't want to spoil everything, but there are some things that I feel like I had to say because there's a lot going on in the story. Now that I've officially rewatched the final season, part 1, what are my overall thoughts now? I definitely have much more appreciation for it now that I've seen part 2 and now that I've gone back and rewatched this. All the little details that I missed and the characters' true intentions, also the conversations and the hidden meanings behind what these characters are saying, it made it more interesting. And the action, it's good. The music is always good. It's how I figured a final season would start, and I was very, very impressed with it. I'm still a little bit, if I had to choose a negative, I would probably say that my negative is that, we really still, within this part 1, we don't get the answers that we're looking for until later. And that is kind of like, because when you watch it, you're just asking yourself, okay, why is this person doing this? Why are they doing that? Like, what is going through everybody's minds? Like, we're actually kind of like the characters in the story. Like, we have no idea what the hell is going on, and we want answers, but we kind of have to let the story play out before we get those answers. But probably the big thing to come from part 1 was realizing what Zeke's plan was, because his original plan, which what we were led to believe, is that the military police in Paradis was going to have someone, or have Historia, eat Zeke and have control of the Beast Titan, since she is a royal blood, and then they would have the power of the Founding Titan themselves. And then if an attack came to Paradis, they would cause a tiny rumbling, which would be unleashing the colossal titans that have surrounded the walls of all the different borders of Paradis, and they would go and march and literally trample anything outside the walls. So that was kind of Paradis' plan. In case somebody were to attack, they would be able to defend themselves and scare the people of the outside world, and nobody would dare attack for 50 or some years. But that would be with a small rumbling. But then once we learn what Zeke's real plan is, now it's just kind of like, whoa. That's not what they were saying. That's the big mystery. But also it's the fact of what has become of Eren and why is he doing the things that he does. And we do kind of get hints about it. And I completely forgot about it until I rewatched it. And it's actually in the scene where he is talking to Mikasa and Armin at the dinner table, where Eren's kind of explaining to them that he's free. and he is sick and tired of looking at people who don't have freedom. In a conversation with the words he tells Mikasa were still, God, that's, even from just rewatching that, God, that's hurtful. That really hurts. But Eren has always been the same. He says that he's never changed. He's always been who he is, and that he has finally found freedom. Again, we'll talk more about that in part 2, because with how they have written Eren from the start and from where we are now, like, there's so much to talk about in the part 2 video that, God, I can't wait to talk about. But we still kind of get an idea of what's going through Eren's mind, but we're still left with a lot of questions with what he's going through. You know, people think that he's being manipulated by Zeke and a character named Yelena, but it appears that maybe he has his own intentions. We're not going to find out until part 2. So a lot of questions, a couple of really great action scenes, but as an overall story from the beginning of part 1 to the ending of part 1, it's played out very well. There's a lot of suspenseful moments, a couple of sad moments too, but it's how a final season should start. And upon rewatching it, I was very impressed. And after finishing part 2, I am really hoping that this show is in a way like Game of Thrones in terms of like how it does storytelling, but I'm hoping that this story ends in a way that I'm satisfied, unlike what the final season of Game of Thrones did. But from what I can say about the final season of Attack on Titan, even though it's divided into parts, it's doing one hell of a remarkable job, and I'm still continuously very impressed with where it's going in terms of storytelling and its characters. And it's only gotten better. And now that I've rewatched part 1, I'm even more impressed. It's one of those rare shows that, you know, is just so good right from the very beginning. And even now that we're in the final season, it still continues to be good. I'm just really hoping it sticks. I think I've said that in the other videos, and that's all I really want. I want this show to stick the landing, so it gives me a reason to go back and rewatch it, just to relive this crazy but epic story that is also very, very tragic. But we'll talk more about that in part 2. This is solely based on part 1. My original grade for the final season part 1 was a C+, because I was a little bit disappointed. I had a lot of questions, but now I'm going to give Attack on Titan, the final season, part 1, I'm going to give it an A-. I'm giving it an A- mostly because even though I understood it a little bit more, you know, it's still the thought lingering of like these questions of what these characters are doing. And yeah, not so much action, but I actually got over that. But some of these epic moments that happen throughout part 1 are just too great. And again, the declaration of war by Eren and the entrance of Levi's squad, it's still just, that's probably my favorite moment from this part, is that moment. And I'm really looking forward to talking about part 2. And I think I may have another Attack on Titan video coming after part 2. It's a little bit of a confession, but we'll wait till we get to that point. And to wrap this up, I do again apologize for not having a first reaction of Morbius. Who knows, it may come down the road, but it's just, I got sick. Work's been crazy. I hope you can forgive me. But now that the final season, part 2 of Attack on Titan is finished up, we can now talk about it, and then we can get to kind of like my confession video after we talk about part 2. But thank you all so much for watching. The next time we meet up, we're going to be talking about the second part of the final season of Attack on Titan, where we have a lot more to talk about. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.